Okay, good luck, goodbye, prayers and blessings, enjoy the car, enjoy being a bishop.
Hey everybody, it's me, Bishop Megan Rohrer, and I'm here to say hello to all of you and to get to know you a little bit better. If you would like to be a part of the conversation, or you have questions for me or for my family that you'd like lifted up, you can put them in the comment section of the space that you are watching this video from. I am Megan Rohrer. I began my life in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, where I also went to college at Augustana University. I drove all the way across the country to go to seminary. I began at Pacific Lutheran Theological Seminary and then completed my education at the Pacific School of Religion, where I also received a doctorate of ministry degree, studying how the pastors organized with the Lutheran Board of Missions in the 60s and 70s here in San Francisco. I have turned in the first draft of my PhD dissertation in transgender theology without apology, and for the first 12 years of my ministry, served the homeless and hungry here in San Francisco with calls from Santa Maria Santa Martha, her church, St. Francis Lutheran, and Christ Church. Also, during that time, was called to an Episcopal church, St. Aidan's Episcopal in Diamond Heights, and specialized in worship services that help people who had been traumatized or harmed by the church, to help them have liturgy experiences that would help them heal some of that trauma. I have served as a pastor at Grace Lutheran in the Sunset here in San Francisco for about 7.5 years, a congregation that was smaller in numbers, declining budget, and helping them to think about ways they could diversify income and ways that they could have more members that were a part of the community around them. And also served for the last 4 years as a chaplain of the San Francisco Police Department. And during my time with that, provided trauma support and care to first responders, provided trainings for people who were experiencing emergencies or deaths in a community, and providing pastoral care for them from an interfaith perspective in a way that supported communities. And also during that time was able to help with a strategic plan to help the police department decrease bias, and worked on a formal apology to the LGBTQ community for unjust policing and unjust laws. And in addition to all of that, some of the best accomplishments in my life have come from my family. So I would like to introduce them to you now. Anybody want to come up and introduce themselves? Come on up. Who's first?
Dominique.
Okay.
My name is Dominique, and I am in 8th grade.
You're in the 8th grade?
You got promoted.
Actually, I'm 8 years old. I was about to be 9 in 4th grade.
Going into, yeah.
Graduated. My favorite thing about church is that we get to share things about God and communion. And also, I would like you not to touch my hair because I think it's a little racist.
When strangers touch your hair. Yeah.
Hello, my name is Michaela, and I am 7.5, and I just graduated from 2nd grade. My favorite part about church is coffee hour and communion and sharing the peace. And I also don't want you to touch my hair because it feels a little bit racist too.
All right.
And I'm Laurel. I'm going this way. This way. Hello. So I'm Megan's wife and these kiddos' mama. And my favorite thing about church is I like community and I like feeding people. I used to help Megan with a very early morning breakfast for the homeless for about a year or so, and found it very fulfilling. And some of the things I like to do, reading and writing and doing art with my kiddos.
Yeah. So that's our family real quick. There's also 2 cats that inhabit this house with us, and sometimes they let us stay here and sometimes they're glad when we're gone. Their names are Toots and McGee. And I think right now one of them, against their consent, is going to be brought here. All right. Well, I am curious if you all have any questions that you would like to lift up for me to think about and talk about tonight. It's such an honor to be able to be the bishop and to be able to think about caring for all of the different diverse congregations that are a part of our Sierra Pacific Synod. And I see lots of hearts and love that is coming in from around the area. So maybe I'll just tell you a couple things that I've been working on until we get a couple of questions, if there are folk who want that lifted up. One of the things that I've been working on over this 2 months since I was elected, that we have been able to kind of start off doing right away, is thinking about the kind of staff that we would have in our synod. And it looks like we'll have a total of 3 assistants to the bishop, one who is the DEM, the person helping us with emerging ministries, and that will be Pastor Tita, who has stated that they are willing to stay on and care for our synod. One is Pastor Amanda Trzynski, who is starting on July 6th and will be in charge of leadership and strategic organizing. Pastor Amanda has a deep love of committees and administration, and believes that those meetings that we have in congregations are just as vital as service and mission and some of the other stuff that is much more fun to talk about on Sundays. And so she is going to help us think about some of the ways that we are organizing together and help us make sure that we can be the most efficient synod that we can be. And so today we put out a first draft of an employee handbook. Updating an employee handbook, a great place to start when someone is starting a position. And our synod employee handbook, I think, dated back to the 80s. And so it was a good thing that we were able to put some minds together and do some updating for that. Catherine Slaybaugh also will be added to our team, a full-time person who is caring about communications and connections, and she will be joining our team on July 19th and will be able to help us think about ways that congregations can creatively work together. If you have ever been a congregation who wanted to do more connecting, or a dean perhaps who has been wanting to do more connecting, but maybe you don't have the administrative support to be able to do so, the hope is that this position will be able to support ways that we can be meeting together, that we can be praying together, that we can be working in service together. And so Catherine very soon will be here to help, make robust emails and beautiful mailings and all of the things that synods need to communicate out to people. There will also be another assistant to the bishop who will be helping with authentic diversity and ways that we can do anti-racism work in the church, partnering with some of the great work that Pastor Tita is already up to. But because it is that important, having more than one person who's thinking about it is something that's important to me and close to my heart. And this person also might help with some translation work into the future. And I'm excited for you to learn who that person is, but I want them to be approved before I share who they are, so that the ways that they are serving the world right now won't be disrupted. There we also will bring on board an executive assistant who will help make me efficient in calendaring and all of the things that need to happen so that I can show up at the right place at the right time in all the ways that I would like to. And in addition to the normal executive assistant functions that have happened traditionally in the Synod, our Synod Council has approved that this person also can spend some time working to develop a Lutheran chaplaincy corps. Part of this grows out of the work that I've done with the San Francisco Police Department and thinking about ways that we can care for folk after a disaster, both the everyday emergencies that happen and then bigger emergencies that have been happening way too often due to the ways that climate patterns have changed, or just the change that happens in a community after gun violence. We know for sure that in our synod, we'll probably experience a very significant drought, and that there will likely be some major fires that will be happening. And so the Lutheran Chaplain Corps will be folk who are interested in learning some trauma care for the first 72 hours, and to be able to provide support for first responders in their own local community who maybe could be called to things together when there's a larger disaster, and it would be appropriate for our communities to come together. And part of the reason that this is really close to my heart is right now, the groups that do chaplaincy work and respond to large-scale emergencies, very often those groups make you sign a waiver that says you won't support or recognize same-sex couples. And so to be able to have a group of chaplains who can be supportive during everyday disasters or particular disasters, but who are going to love the fullness of people that God loves, is something that's very important to me. We've got a question that we'll lift up. What am I hoping to accomplish and achieve in this new position as bishop? I think one of the first things is kind of like what every pastor is hoping to do, to like connect with people and to connect with congregations. And so I see the faith communities that we have around our synod being the folk that I would love to get to know better, and to be able to come and spend real tangible time with you and with the leaders that have been supporting your communities. One of the things that I want to make sure we do this year, because we're all coming out of a pandemic that has been just difficult for all of us, to be sheltered in place, to be grieving as much as we are, is to provide wellness opportunities for professional leaders. And by that, I mean both people who are on the official roster of who we think of as paid employees in churches, but also the people who have been stepping up and doing extraordinary amounts of volunteering. So those church treasurers that we always joke are in office for life, but ways that we can have wellness care to help us kind of get back into the swing of things, maybe reignite our faith if we need that, to think about ways that BIPOC pastors, or pastors who are Black, Indigenous, pastors of color, think about ways they can have a special wellness retreat, to think about the multiple ways that not only did the pandemic affect them, but also some of the racial upheavals, the racial injustices in our country have also had a particular effect. And so finding ways that I can support folk is very important on my heart. And I already kind of spoke a little bit about some of the chaplaincy work. I also really want to find some ways that we can do out loud anti-racism work with each other. Continuing some of the online conversations that I started during the pandemic at justlutheran.com, if you haven't seen any of that. But intersectional conversations, lifting up diverse folk, giving people in every inch of our synod, regardless of how rural their spaces are, opportunities, whether they're online or in person, to experience faith leaders who have lots of different intersections of diversity, so that when it comes time to call a pastor, maybe our imaginations are widened about who might be the person who comes to serve us next. The next question I see in the comment section is, how do I counsel members of the LGBTQ community that have been hurt by the church, particularly by people who use the Bible as a weapon? And I think some of the first things that I say when I reach out to people is that God moves without second, right? The Holy Spirit shows up in places regardless of what a majority vote says. And so remembering those promises and grace that God has given us, and that Jesus taught the disciples, that come to unexpected places beyond boundaries, reminds us again and again that God is with us and for us, regardless of whether or not anyone else's Bible interpretation agrees with us. Folk who have been harmed, I think, when it's possible, I usually apologize for the ways that they have experienced the church. For the LGBTQ community, part of the reason that these traumas are sticking really deep is that during a pandemic, during the origin and the beginning of the AIDS and HIV crisis, is about the same time that our beloved Lutheran Church began studying and deciding that it wasn't quite sure if those baptismal promises applied to this particular group of people. And so making those decisions, maybe all of us can understand a bit deeper now as we live through this current pandemic, that when people are sick and dying and there is fear and there is health issues at stake, is not the right time to debate the worth and the dignity of people. And so helping to let people know who might wonder why the LGBT community needs kind of special outreach or special conversations, that there's some real trauma and triggers that have happened, is a big part of that. And then I just love to celebrate the ways that the Bible reminds us again and again that, as Psalm 30 says, God's anger may be a moment, but God's love lasts forever. Weeping comes in the night, but rejoicing comes in the morning. This idea that even if, worst case scenario, folk are right and God is mad that gay people are gay, that God is a God who liberates and names and saves us beyond what we deserve, and that God shows up for us again and again. And I think that's the other thing that happens, I think, that may be important to name, is that as someone who grew up in South Dakota around the time when Matthew Shepard died, most people who said negative things about me or about the Bible or about my life have apologized. Like, that people can change, that churches can change. And so be open to the possibility that folk have changed, and believe them when they say that they've changed, not because you're going to let folk hurt you again, but because sometimes there is a joy and a rejoicing that can come when we actually notice that the world has turned a bit. And so, be open to the possibility that God's up to some stuff, because it feels evident to me ever since this election that the Holy Spirit has been kind of using a fire hose of gladness and welcome and warmth that has really been apparent to me. And hopefully, some of the splashes of that fire hose have been noticeable to other people as well. Do I have ideas on working to rebrand Christianity? Well, I don't know. I wouldn't call it rebranding, although I am using probably a fancier video live streaming service right now than most people do. So it definitely probably looks splashier. I don't think it's so much of a marketing issue, but a translation issue. I think throughout our biblical scriptures is a number of lovely parables and poems and stories that remind us that God loves us, and ways that God connected to people that were in a lot of the same circumstances as us, but not all of them. And so just as Martin Luther took up the task of translating the Bible into a German that was understandable in Wartburg Castle, I think each generation gets the opportunity to retranslate the way that Bible can speak to that community. And so that means doing Bible study in ways that are public and are allowing diverse voices to be a part of them, and seeing if there are ways that God is showing up in the world that we might not have noticed. And so that means fancy worship with the smells and bells that comfort our hearts, but sometimes it means getting out of our sanctuaries and noticing all the communities where God already was, that we need to start being able to name and talk about. And so I have found that there have been a number of people who are very interested in learning about how to do prayer. There are a lot of people who contact me online when I do public prayers. And if you ever have a Wednesday where you want to pop in on live stream prayers that I'm up to, notice how many diverse people from so many diverse locations are into talking about ways that they can put good energy into the world and the ways that they can connect with God and connect with a creator that is beyond themselves. And so my experience is that God's out there getting some stuff done. But sometimes our language needs to be updated. Sometimes the ways that we talk about it need to have a new medium, right? Like the printing press or social media or live streaming. And then you discover a whole new way that people are able to encounter God. Let's see. This is a question I've been getting pretty often. Where will my home base be? Will the family move or stay in San Francisco? Will the Synod office remain in Sacramento? Good question. So over the last kind of time of Bishop Mark, we had 3 Synod offices in kind of diverse strategic locations: a Sacramento office, a Burlingame office, a Fresno office. And I think even if you go farther back in the history, there were other offices as well. The Sacramento office is for sale. I don't know if you all know that. It's owned by the Presbytery, and it has a big for sale sign out front. And so that means that even if we wanted to stay in Sacramento, it's not necessarily up to us to be able to stay in that place. I have always imagined, if I was elected bishop, that we would move the Synod office to a congregation, and that it would be a way that the Synod could remain connected to congregations, but also could help kind of enrich the life of congregations. And so we're in the process of trying to bring the bishop's office to a congregation. However, because we have a new thinking about what it means to be telecommuting or to do remote work, I think you'll find that the folk that who are coming onto staff, some of them are interested in remaining working from home. Some of the folk might be interested in some office space. And I won't speak for anyone else here, but some of us have been sheltered in place with lots of kids for over a year and a half. And the idea of having an office that we could go to that would sometimes be quiet might appeal to some people.
Be good.
Yeah, I don't know who. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
So I know I will have an office that's in the congregation space. One of our Synod staffers, I'll let Pastor Manda talk more about this on July 6th, but I'm just going to throw it out there for more thinking. Pastor Manda, who is going to be working in what we typically call mobility in churchy speak, and it means like how pastors get moved around and when new pastors come. Well, she is very interested in van life. So she's going to take mobility mobile. So her office is going to be a vehicle. And so some of us will be experimenting with new ways of doing this. Some folk will be living a bit farther away, but traveling here quite often. And so we're going to be kind of living into this new reality of what workspace can be like in a post-pandemic world. And I trust you all will give us feedback about what you think about it. We don't have current plans to move from San Francisco right now. So the congregation that we're kind of thinking of is in the Burlingame area, just as the previous bishop's office was also in the Burlingame area. So that's what it looks like for now. We have had some conversations in our family about what would it mean, where would we like to live now? Because we're a family who has lived through this pandemic without a backyard, and we live very close to Golden Gate Park, but the idea of maybe having a backyard has been something that has creatively inspired our family. So there might be moving in the future. Not certain, but no plans to move at this time. Let's see. Pastor Amanda, I think, is just wanting me to talk about things I'm passionate about. Do you have a hope and a dream for this ministry that you would like to share? I think my it's not really like a hope or a dream that has like a tangible benchmark where you can say like, we did it, cross it off the list. But I think particularly because the way I entered ministry during a time when the Lutheran Church wasn't quite sure if someone who had a body like mine could be a pastor, let alone a bishop. One of the things that's deep in my heart is to try to see if there are ways that we can expand the diversity of people who can imagine themselves being pastors, people who can imagine themselves as Lutheran, people who can imagine themselves as beloved by God. And so I have a hunch that involves some very nerdy policy work of trying to like be the best we can at candidacy and trying to be the best we can at confirmation in new and diverse ways with some translation. But also, I think, well, you might have noticed that there has been a lot of press about the fact that I was elected bishop, which I honestly think says more about you all and the diversity of hope and dreams that you have for what is possible in this synod than it does necessarily about me. But my conversations, whenever I have talked to the press, I try to lift up Jesus as much as possible. I try to lift up Lutheran congregations as much as possible. And I try to get the message out far and wide in as much evangelism as I can, right? One of the things that I talked a lot about during the question and answer time period during the election process. And I guess, if anything, we could say like, checked one thing off the list, said I would do evangelism. Man, I did a lot of press. And so there'll be some more evangelism to come. I'm hoping that if you are a congregation that's in a place where there's like a local paper, where they might not necessarily put it in the paper like when you're doing congregational stuff, but if, you know, a bishop showed up who is in the news every once in a while, that it might be like a free ad for your congregation. And I think my hope is, if it's possible, to help people come to your congregation and to see what's going on, and to try to connect communities. I had a lovely time in Fresno a few weeks ago. I went to both Hope Lutheran and to Trinity Lutheran. And one of the things I noticed at Trinity Lutheran is that there were a lot of people who weren't quite sure if they were ready to come back to in-person worship yet. And they were following all of the protocols. They were being safe, but it just felt strange to kind of depart from their house and get back into the routine of coming to church. Well, the fact that the new bishop was arriving was a good enough reason. And so large numbers of people did, in fact, show up. So if there are congregations where you're worried about similar things like that, then let me know. I can pop up in your location, and hopefully we can think about ways that we can inspire people to get out of their pajamas. Well, you can come in your pajamas if it's that kind of congregation, but back into our worship spaces to sing together and share communion together and have coffee hour together if it's safe in your area. How do you take back the authority of the religious right? Well, I don't know if I need to take anyone's authority away. But I am someone who believes in what in the Canadian churches they call PI, being public, being intentional, and being explicit about God's love, about the diversity of people that God loves, and about being unapologetically Lutheran and unapologetically someone who loves Jesus. And so I think there has been a long time in the United States, here in particular, where people have equated being progressive or being faithful with being quiet about their faith to not offend other people. And I very much deeply believe in interreligious community and ways that we can partner with other faiths and ways that we can partner with city communities and inspire faith. But I don't believe that you have to do that quietly or by omitting the word Jesus in order to do that. And so I think the problem is not that the religious right has more authority than us. It's that they speak louder than us. And sometimes people mistake anger and volume with being correct or being the only Christians that exist. And so you might have noticed, I'm not someone who is afraid to speak out. I'm not someone who's afraid to speak out on large platforms. And I don't have a need for vanity or lots of attention. But if there are ways that folk want to notice that God is up to something and that there is a counter narrative to some of the anger that people are proclaiming, or to say loudly that only love is love, hate is not love, and telling people they're wrong is not love, and being a role model in the world for ethical conversations and for conversations that are complicated but still kind, then that's the kind of way that I would like to be using the authority that I have been given by the handing down of the big bishop's cross. And so that's kind of what I've been thinking about. But I also think about ways that we can lift up the full community of people to be able to have those conversations. I'm a deep believer in giving the bullhorn to the person who has the most at stake, letting those who are at the forefront of an issue based on their embodied life, letting them speak first, last, and longest. And so that means that one thing that might be different is that synodical trainings, synodical resources, synodical programming under my time as bishop will be led by people with embodied histories of the issue that they're teaching. And that might be a slight shift, but it's a shift that's long overdue and something that we can handle because great is the diversity of our synod and the leaders that we have. All right, this one is for you guys. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Get back up here. How has the election to bishop affected my family? And how has my family reacted to me becoming a bishop? Ideas? Dominique?
I don't really know what that means.
How did you feel when I was elected bishop?
I felt not ready.
Not ready? What weren't you ready for? Oh, because you were late?
Yeah.
They got there
And
late. They
because,
missed it.
We don't know if we want to move yet. We didn't think of what would happen if Papa did become bishop. And we decided what would happen if he didn't become bishop.
Oh, you were trying to prepare me for if I was going to feel bad?
Yeah, I'll be the bishop if you wanted to.
Ready or not, here we go, guys.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
we were excited. We are excited. A lot of people keep coming up to me and saying, "Is it gonna be okay?" And I'm excited. I think it's gonna be good.
Yeah.
Yeah. We get to make a lot of jokes about moving diagonally too. That's
Chess jokes and bishops.
I can only move diagonally.
How has it been going to church since I got elected bishop?
I like it
Why do you like it?
because I like church.
And
And
what do they give you when you go to church?
everyone gives the kids candy
As
when they
bishop's
show up.
kids.
The best Sunday school presents ever. You got necklaces, you got bubbles, just the best stuff. And Michaela and Dominique, because I was serving in a very small congregation where they were the only children, had never been to like Sunday school with lots of other kids before. And so that was really fun. Did you like Sunday school?
yeah, of course.
Of course.
And then we colored in these word bubbles that says faith.
Yeah, and we got to spend some time at Mount Cross Camp, and they hated that.
That was
Yeah, we
That
had.
No,
I
it was
hated
your
it.
most favorite thing
I
ever.
hated
that was
it.
pretty fun.
Yeah.
We had a good time.
They had a lot of fun at camp, and to be able to go there and spend some time and learn some camp songs and roast marshmallows over the fire has been
And
a lot of
have
fun.
s'mores.
They've
And
been
then we saw 2 deers.
2 years, yeah. And they've been troopers because you guys even came along once when we went to an 8 o'clock service at one congregation and a 10 o'clock service at a whole nother congregation. And They were like great during worship, which was surprising to me, but lovely.
And then we went to Wendy's.
Yeah, I've been teaching them about different fast food restaurants in different parts of our geography and what's the best thing I think you can order at each of those places. I haven't taken them to In-N-Out yet, but I think it's
love In-N-Out.
I think it's coming. I tried to take them to Sonic, but there was construction and we couldn't get there.
What
I
is
saw
In-N-Out?
Sonic, though.
I'm just saying. Yeah.
Me too. What is
Oh, wait and
In-N-Out is
see.
like really, really good burgers.
Wait and see. Yep. So we've had some fun with it, right? And you kind of like driving and seeing all the different scenery. It's the complete opposite of being stuck in the house together for a year and a half, hasn't it?
No.
All right, let's see what the next question is. Good job. Good answers, you guys. I like it. Let's see. We figured out how to be church in an online environment, at least for the sake of being a congregation. Will you help us grow to serve others online? Yes, I would love to be able to help do that. I have a hunch that there are some folk who are checking out the fact that I'm using StreamYard right now instead of Zoom, because on StreamYard, I can see everyone's comments from all of the different places that they're leaving comments, and I can respond to them live and I can post them on the screen here. And it's a lovely way to interact with folk. I find I'm going to do a couple of things that I'm going to model for the Synod, things that y'all can copy or that you can invite people to or that you can engage with conversations online. So on Wednesdays, I'm going to have a live stream of prayer. Thursdays, not next week because I got to do Baby Bishop Boot Camp, but Thursdays, I'm going to do Bible study and theology and try to lift up folk who are very diverse, who can give us maybe new and interesting insights about what the Bible readings are for that week. Fridays, we'll have Just Lutheran congregations, which are intersectional conversations that help us just learn about different types of communities and maybe about some books that we can read if you're interested in reading books together. And what I'm going to need help with is, since I started doing online prayers, there have been so many more prayer requests than just one human being can answer. And so I'm going to start inviting some different faith leaders and different communities to pop on here with me, because I can have more than one person. And for the week following the live stream of the prayers, to have people who act as maybe online deacons who can help keep the prayer going. And so people can private message me prayers and I'll send them a private prayer message back. But they can also put the responses on the regular chat if they're fine with them being lifted up and seen by others. And so as a part of kind of this process of demonstrating some of the ways that you can be doing online stuff together, I'm going to be asking some folk to help me and to hold some things in prayers, and hopefully that'll help us serve a lot of other people. I have a large group of people who have been following me online, in part because I've been doing Bible study for about 15 years online. It's hard to even imagine Zoom was around that long. But because of that, it means that a lot of people are popping in and looking for support or gratitude or cheerleading. And so I'd love to have other people learn how to do it. We'll do maybe some online classes about some of the things I think about, the ways that pastoral boundaries might be a little bit different when you're doing online ministries. Thinking about, what do you do if someone mean comes along, or how do I filter out negative comments? What are some of the ways that I think about that? And so just a few ways that we can talk about some of this stuff kind of out loud, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
How will I relate and accept those who are conservative within the ELCA? Well, I mentioned earlier, I grew up in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, which is a space where when you disagreed with people, you still were in community with them. And sometimes the people you disagreed with the least were the people that you were the best friends with, because you felt like they must be honest, because they tell you out loud how they feel. And so my sense of family and community and relating with people is about having people of very diverse and different kinds of beliefs. I was trained in a very high church style, so I'm very comfortable with a high church style. I myself like to read very old church documents and have some ways in which my worship life is maybe more conservative than my career might tell you, because I have been called to communities that adore things and appreciate singing things like Beatles Mass doesn't necessarily mean it was my favorite songs that we were singing. And so there are parts of lots of types of worship services that really resonate with my heart. I think you'll find I know a lot of the words to the How Great Thou Art and all of those wonderful hymns that remind me of the faith that I had when I was worshiping in South Dakota. And so I find that I'm the kind of person who is drawn to get to know people. And my experience has been that as people get to know me and they see that I am a person of faith, and maybe gets to know me over time, where they see that I'm not necessarily the person they might be afraid is going to happen. And just because my pronouns might be different than people are used to, or, my haircut might be different than people are used to, or what I'm wearing might be different than people are used to, doesn't necessarily mean that we have everything else that we disagree on. And so I find that even in spaces where our worship styles are different, we might still be able to talk for hours about gardening, or about rhubarb pie, or about ways that we are connected kind of beyond those things. And one of the examples that I think of with this is that before the 2009 vote of the ELCA, the vote where they were going to decide if LGBTQ folk could be pastors in the Lutheran Church, I was standing with Irma Wolf, who was the head of the organization, hoping that LGBTQ folk would not be allowed in the ELCA. And she asked if we could pray together. And we knew each other because we both care about justice work. We both care about feeding the homeless and caring for those who are hungry. And so we had a lot in common, even though we had this one issue where we were the exact opposite. And so we prayed together silently in a deep hug, both praying for opposite outcomes of how the church would vote, but both very much committed to being people of faith together. And so my hunch is that there might be some people who are like, no thanks, you're not the kind of bishop we would like to have come around, and that's fine. But I hope to be fun enough that people maybe change their mind a little bit. Some of the things that I want to start off by doing in visiting different parts of our synod is to have weekends that I'm in different locations where multiple congregations can get visits all at the same time. And here's how I'm imagining it right now, where on Fridays, maybe we could have hymn sings and a meal maybe. On Saturdays, we could maybe do a service project. And then on Sundays, I could be with more than one congregation for worship. Maybe those are 5 different places that I end up encountering. Maybe some of it is bringing connections because people want to work together on a service project, or maybe it's a competition to see whose choir is the best and they get some sort of silly prize that the bishop has brought. Whatever it is that is the best way that I can come and be with you and learn more about you. My hunch is that you'll find out I'm a pretty typical Lutheran from South Dakota when you get to know me, even if my family is different than you would expect. That was a good question, though. I appreciated it. During the election, you loved the person who pointed out on Twitter that I was the first person to mention Jesus. I think that was one of the Serrano brothers. I'm going to guess that it's Jeremy Serrano, but maybe I'm just saying that because I visited Joshua's congregation already, and twins. When you pick one, you get in trouble. But yes, I appreciate that too. I'm a big fan of Jesus. The Jesus story is one of the biggest reasons that I'm a Lutheran, and it's why I'm a pastor, and it's why I feel like I'm called to be a parent, and why I'm in a married relationship. And it's part of why I think that this world has so much hope in it, even though it feels like things are sometimes falling apart and sometimes different than we would expect. I think that Jesus was pushing boundaries, and other times, if you're reading the Gospel of Mark, there was a lot of women who were pushing Jesus's boundaries, and Jesus had the leadership style that was smart enough to go along with it, because that's what God was up to. And so I adore talking about Jesus and talking about Scripture, and I'm very excited to be able to do that as a bishop, and to be able to share that story, maybe even far and wide, for folk who might never have heard it before, who might not have imagined that the story of Jesus could apply to them, because they never saw anyone with a body like them talking about Jesus's story. So that's something I am definitely very excited about as well. I gotta say, you guys asked some really wonderful questions. It's been a great time to chat here. I'm wondering, Michaela and Dominique, if you have anything you think we should share.
What do you mean, questions or answers?
Oh, either. You got questions?
I don't know. I was just asking.
Oh, okay.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
What does it feel like to be the bishop?
That's what I was gonna ask.
Well, being the bishop feels like it's a couple things. One, it's a great joy and an honor, because I was elected by a bunch of people that I think are wonderful, and it's a job that I think is pretty great. Getting to care for, be the pastors of pastors, that's a great job. Being someone who cares about congregations and supports them and connecting with each other, that's a pretty good job.
Well,
And I kind of think that if there's someone whose job it is to do discipline in a synod, that it ought to be someone who understands the impact of what could happen if that discipline goes in a way that is wrong or unfair or just, and who's going to always try to think about those things. And it doesn't mean I'm going to get it right every time, but it just means that I might think about things a little bit differently than other people, and I'll just really try to do my best.
do you like to do a lot of video calls and stuff all day long?
Well, I think video calls are just a great way to be able to connect with people quickly, to not leave the house. You know what I like about video calls? This is my favorite part about video calls. In between the video calls, I get to sneak hugs from 3 of my favorite people in the whole world.
I wonder who they are.
I wonder who they are. And
What do you
yeah.
What do you like about being the bishop? What is the best thing about being the bishop?
Well, I've only been the bishop for
One day. No, not even.
about 12 hours ish. It's a little bit longer than that. But you know what I like about it? I like that I get to see the Lutheran Church from a whole new perspective. Because when I was becoming a pastor, I thought that bishops were only people who would call you when you were in big trouble. And so it's been so nice to get cards from almost every single bishop in the whole Lutheran Church. And it's been nice to be able to see what happens at church-wide and to learn more about it and to try to be able to share it with people. And so I think it's been, for me, very healing to be someone who is taking on a role that people said was impossible. Because for God, ain't nothing impossible.
Do you like being the first trans bishop?
I like being the first trans bishop because I think people knowing that means that folk who are only able to imagine that their life would be hard and difficult now can imagine that being trans means that they are people of faith. I don't like being called the first trans bishop all the time and only that, because I'm so much more. Like, I did so much study. I've done a lot of work. I'm a parent. And so I'm not really just one thing. And I think sometimes when people only say that I'm the first trans bishop, then they miss out on all the other fun parts of myself. And, I just like to be safe as much as possible. That's how I feel about it. Do you like that I'm the first trans bishop?
Mm-hmm.
How come?
Because it feels nice, and Michaela and me get to play a lot because you're on a bunch of meetings.
Oh, you ate a lot of treats today.
Yeah.
Oreos,
Rice
Lots of-
Krispies, and
Lots of treats
cookies.
for breakfast.
Mm-hmm. It was they invented their own Monopoly card games where they got to pick what happened if they got chance, and they made sure they picked the one that said they got lots of treats.
No, it was actually on the. It was the one. It was the next one, and then Dominique got the question marks, and then
Yeah.
we got it.
Totally legit.
We play a lot of board games in our
Papa
family.
threw it away,
Should we
though.
tell people that we play a lot of board games in our family?
Yeah, like the
We've
tan.
been playing a lot of Settlers of Catan lately. And
Or
one of our
Battle
friends,
Sheep.
Battle Sheep, I
That's a
don't
new
think
one.
I've ever played
That's
that.
a new one.
We just got
Oh,
that.
and we just got
Yeah.
Michaela said.
Sweetie Grandma, Sweetie Granny, Sweetie Grandma, Sweetie Granny.
I don't even know what that game is, but I'm
It's really
excited
fun.
to see what it is.
You have to take away the treats without waking Granny up.
I don't believe we've played the game Racco yet, but I think we should try to get it.
I-
What do you think?
I feel like I've heard of it.
You've heard of it?
I feel like
I think that it's going to be fun, and maybe we should try it. That's what I think.
Does he know?
yeah.
Well, do you know what I think?
What?
I think that we have shared a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's so much more conversation to
You have shared a lot.
I shared a lot. Do you want to share anything about yourself?
Ow! I just got squeezed by Michaela.
Well, what I mostly want you to know is that I love you a lot, dear Synod, dear Sierra Pacific Synod, that our family would like to visit you sometime soon. And if you are inspired or interested in any of the things that I have been passionate about, you can feel free to reach out and let us know. You can also leave comments in the video if you have ideas of stuff that we should be thinking about as the Synod so that we can improve and get better. And know that we're going to have regular conversations like these live streams where you will be able to learn more about what's happening in the Synod. Because I used to be someone who didn't always know what was going on. And it wasn't always the people who worked in the Synod's fault that I didn't know that what was going on. Right? And so anything that can make it possible for us to communicate more or let you know what we're up to or get more feedback is something that we are interested in. If you have not done so already, please save the date. September 11th is going to be when my installation is. We're still working on finalizing the exact time because the installation is moving to Grace Cathedral due to expecting a lot of people to want to show up. And in particular, because I think there will be a lot of bishops who want to show up. It's true. And so save the date, September 11th. Come and join us at Grace Cathedral. And we're going to have a very fun installation. Guys, do you want to sing them a camp song before we leave?
Let's sing the Joy song.
You're going to sing the Joy song again?
Yeah, because I think that's the only one we remember.
What about Fill My Cup and Let It Overflow?
No, we only know fill my cup and let it out. We only know a little
Fill my
bit.
cup and let it overflow.
Oh, fill my cup and let it overflow. Oh yeah, fill my cup and let it overflow. Let it overflow with love. Let's sing the Joy song. Wait, let me think.
And if you need some additions to your children's choir when we come and visit, I know a couple of kids who would
Are we gonna
love
do
to
Joy?
sing along with you. You gonna
Okay.
do it? All right.
Yeah. Joy, 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 all the joy, 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 all the joy, 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 all the joy, 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 for Jesus, always for others, and why, except for you, and you, and you, and you, and you. joy, 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 all the joy, joy, all the joy, joy, all the joy, joy. Today is for Jesus, oh, it's for others, and I stands for you, and you, and you, and you, joy, 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 joy.
Thank you, everyone, for watching. And I hope that you will have a blessed day.